Hi, I'm Mia Rigdon, nutritionist, trained chef, and the founder of Rasa.
Hi, I'm Jenny Dorsey. I'm a chef, writer, and the founder of Studio Tao.
And welcome back to Alt Baking Bootcamp,
your crash course in healthier baking.
Today we're going to be making one of my all-time favorite desserts, a chocolate tart. This is something that I would normally order if I saw on a dessert menu at a restaurant, and this is a super fun recipe to cook at home or bring over to a friend's house, and I find really impressive.
And today we're making it refined sugar-free, grain-free, gluten-free, and lactose-free. So for any occasion, any party, you can bring this out and feel awesome because everyone can probably eat it. But first, we always do a taste test. So we have a store-bought version, a very decked out version that we are gonna try first. In a traditional tart, you usually have a lot of refined flour, so regular, all-purpose flour. There's probably a lot of dairy, a lot of eggs, and there's probably a lot of eggs in the chocolate base as well. And you usually just don't have a really high quality chocolate in there. So today we're using a 70% dark chocolate. I think this might be milk. There's white chocolate on top, so really helping you cut down on that sugar.
All right, should we check it out?
Yeah.
Let's taste it. If you look here, you can see the crust to filling ratio, which is something that we like to talk about.
And that chocolate is really stiff.
The crust is really crunchy.
It's very crumbly.
But the filling is it's not overly sweet, but it definitely has some sweetness and it holds together really nicely, like almost like a really thick chocolate mousse. You definitely need something light to balance out the heaviness of the chocolate. What we need to really nail in our chocolate tart is that really rich, chocolatey texture and flavor to the filling, and then just like a nice, crumbly, crispy crust, and then something light on top to balance it all out. So there's only a few ingredients in this crust. So we're gonna start with 1.5 cups of almond flour, then 1/2 cup of coconut flour, 2 tablespoons of coconut sugar, which is actually the only added sugar in this entire recipe, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, 6 tablespoons of ghee, which we have melted. We've used ghee in a few recipes, so be sure to look back and check those out in the strawberry shortcake. But you can easily substitute for coconut oil. And then we're just gonna pinch some salt in there as well. And we're gonna mix this around with our hands. Ready to get dirty?
Yeah.
The ghee is going to mix with the coconut and almond flour, and it's gonna create a crumbly texture. So as you can see, Jenny's mixing it in there and it's forming almost like little balls. And you could use a spatula or a fork for this, but sometimes in baking, it's better just to get your hands in there. Don't you think, Jenny?
Yeah, and it's kind of fun when you can use your hands if you're like baking with kids, baking with your friends.
That actually looks pretty good to me because as we put it into the tart pan, which we're about to get, you're gonna be mixing it together even more. So we're gonna be putting this dough into a removable tart pan, which I'm gonna grab right now. And if you don't have one of these, you should get one because they're pretty cool. So the ghee is basically as if we've buttered or oiled the pan, and then the bottom is removable. So this is the key because then you can get that really beautiful outside crust that's visible, and it just makes the presentation really nice and it makes it a lot easier to cut. Jenny, with her crust hands, is going to press the dough firmly into the tart pan. I normally start from the middle and then work up to the sides, or you could do the sides first to get a really good thick crust on there, but you really wanna work it in. And so this is not only gonna help the ghee to incorporate with the other ingredients in the crust, but it's also going to create a more stable, thicker crust.
And since in this recipe, we're baking this crust off and then chilling it to serve, this pressure that we're using right now just to like keep the crust steady is really like the main binder that we're using for this.
Exactly.
So you wanna make sure that you don't have like weird cracks in here and that everything is really nice and filled in.
And as Jenny mentioned, this recipe keeps really well in the fridge or in the freezer, but if you're making this for a party or a special event, you could easily make the crust the day before and then do the filling the day of, just to break the recipe down into different parts.
Or if you wanna make a bunch of crusts and keep them in your freezer.
Exactly.
And you can also switch out the filling if you wanted to.
I mean, you could literally just put like berries and cream on it, or you could try some caramel. So Jenny's just working the crust in there, and now it's getting to the edges and really pressing, you know, firmly against the side of the pan so that we can get those, that scalloped edge that will make the presentation really nice. And you know, if this is the first time you've done this and you mess it up, you can always just take it out and redo it or redistribute some of the crust from one part of the pan to another. I mean, so many times I've realized that it's slightly uneven, and using the heel of your hand sometimes towards the end can help to push. If you feel like there's one area on the bottom that has a little bit more crust than another, you can push it out to make it even more even. The oven is already preheated to 350 degrees, and we are just gonna bake this crust for about 15 minutes. All right, I think it's time to take the crust out of the oven. It smells so good in here right now. It's that ghee and the coconut sugar together with the almonds. It smells great. Let's take it out. So we're looking for a nice golden brown crust, which is what we've achieved here. And we're just gonna let this cool while we make the filling.
So for our chocolate filling, we are gonna use a double boiler setup. I know that double boilers sound really complicated and kind of stressful, but they're actually really easy. So as you can see behind Mia, all we have is a glass Pyrex bowl. You wanna use something that won't crack under pressure and heat. And then we just have a pot of water, and the water you want is like a lightly simmering sort of water, and make sure you have enough so that obviously it doesn't evaporate when you're making your filling. We just wanna make sure essentially that the chocolate is not subjected to direct heat. In this scenario, they're getting a really nice, diffused, gentle heat.
Yeah, it's essentially the steam coming off the warm water that melts the chocolate. And for our filling, we only have 4 very simple ingredients. We're going to use chocolate. This is 70% organic chocolate chips. We've talked about chocolate chips in a few episodes, and chocolate in general in a few episodes already. Chocolate is healthy.
In small quantities.
Yeah, but it's wonderful. The cacao bean is a wonderful source of antioxidants. It's a mood booster. It's delicious. We love it. But a lot of times chocolate gets a bad stigma because of the things that we add to it. So here we're using organic fair trade, 70% dark chocolate. You could use the discs. You could, break down a chocolate bar, but chocolate chips are easy enough. We also have organic, unsweetened, full-fat coconut milk, which we have used a lot on Alt Baking Bootcamp. And so we're gonna mix those together with some vanilla extract and then that with some eggs, and we'll get to that part. But that's it. That's all the ingredients in the filling.
And if you want a darker or slightly lighter chocolate, you feel free. There's plenty of chocolate options out there.
Yeah, but this 70% I think blends some sweetness, but also gives you that really rich dark chocolate taste that we found in the original and that we're trying to replicate. So as you can see, the chocolate's starting to melt and combine with the coconut milk and the vanilla. We still have some bits of chocolate in here, but we're really looking for that nice creamy consistency that we're starting to get. You just have to be patient. You can see the chocolate is really creamy. All right, this is looking great. The texture is super creamy, and you can see it looks really, really smooth. You gotta be careful because that glass bowl is gonna be hot. And now we're just going to whisk a couple of eggs, and then we're gonna have to temper the eggs because we do not want the hot chocolate mixture to scramble the eggs.
So what you're doing when you're tempering eggs is essentially you're incorporating a warmish, hot-ish liquid, usually some sort of dairy, but in this case we have a non-dairy version, and you're incorporating into raw eggs. So the point is to essentially kind of like diffuse the protein structures of the egg, so as that it cooks, it develops this really nice creamy consistency because it doesn't like bump into each other as much. And you want to do this slowly because, as Mia said, if you do it when it's really hot, you're essentially scrambling eggs and disrupting the protein structures in the wrong way. I'm gonna grab a bowl. And after we whisk these eggs together.
So this is gonna go back in the oven once we pour it into the tart shell. And we've kept the oven at 350 degrees, and this is essentially a custard.
So you wanna have these eggs whisked, and then you're slowly gonna transfer like spoonful by spoonful to start some of your hot mixture.
Just gonna put a little in here first.
And you wanna be continuously mixing to incorporate.
Essentially what this is doing is slowly heating up the eggs without cooking them. And then when we feel comfortable that we've gotten there, and you can feel the bottom of the bowl and see if it's starting to get a little warm, then we can just slowly pour in all of the chocolate mixture.
It's obviously a lot easier to do if you have a friend.
Or 4 hands.
Yeah.
But also not hard to make on your own. You just gotta be careful. And I've never scrambled an egg doing this. And I've made this many times, and I sometimes can do things a little bit more quickly than I probably should. So just be cautious, but
You're probably fine.
you'll be fine.
And you can like start, if you're doing it by yourself, you can start and stop.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do kind of this continuous motion that we are right now.
Okay, I'm gonna start pouring.
Start.
You're all right
I'm
with that,
ready.
Jenny?
I'm ready.
So it's definitely starting, I can see now with the chocolate and the egg together that it feels a little bit thicker in texture than it did before, kind of like a pudding. And then when we bake it, it's gonna set. Okay, I think that the filling looks perfect, so I'm just gonna grab our tart shell, which is nice and chilled now, and we can get this moving.
I also brought a vanilla bean alongside if you want to add. If we want to be super gourmet, you probably saw this on a different episode. You can just slice this in half, scoop out all the little seeds, and you have extra vanilla flavor.
So now we are just gonna pour the filling into our chilled crust, fill it all the way to the top, and then we're going to bake this at 350 degrees for about 20 minutes. And how you'll know when it's done is you can give the sheet pan a little jiggle, and if it's firm in the middle, then you know it's done. You could also like lightly press with the finger, but if any chocolate gets on your fingertip, then you know it needs to bake for a few more minutes. It should feel firm throughout. So a sheet pan is really helpful in this situation because you don't want to be transferring the tart pan. As you can see, the chocolate filling is really liquidy. So the sheet pan just helps it so that it's not a mess. You're not chocolate all over the place or all over your oven.
Yeah.
All right, so before we throw this in the oven, we are just gonna sprinkle some fresh Maldon sea salt on top, because it wouldn't be a salted chocolate tart without a little salt. So the salt is going to accentuate the flavor of the chocolate, and like many of our Alt Baking Bootcamp recipes, we're always looking for that perfect blend of sweet and salty. Should we bake it?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's been 20 minutes, so I'm gonna go check my tart. All ovens are a little bit different, so it could take up to 25 minutes. I would set the timer for somewhere between 15 and 20, and then start with the jiggle test, which we're gonna do right now. So I just pull the sheet pan out and give the tart a good jiggle, and I can see that it's not really moving. I'm even gonna just give it a little touch, and yeah, it's sticky, but it's firm. So I'm gonna take this out. Okay, so we've taken our tart out of the oven and we've given it ample time to cool, and now we are ready to get it ready to eat. We talked about the tart pan in the beginning, but now you can see actually how cool this is. It just comes right out, and there you go. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And so you can see it's like the ghee that's in the crust is what allows it to come out so easily and so clean. And look at that beautiful golden
nice
brown
ridges.
tart. Looks pretty good.
It looks really good. And you can see where the salt came in too.
Yeah,
So it
you can
looks
see
nice.
little crystals of salt on the top, and the chocolate looks really decadent and firm.
Look at that.
Oh yeah, it cuts really nicely. This is room temperature right now, or slightly warm because we just baked it. And so if you keep this in the fridge, it's gonna be a little bit more firm. This is a lot of chocolate, it's super chocolatey. So I like to balance out that richness and intensity of the chocolate with some coconut whipped cream, which we've gone over in many Alt Baking Bootcamp recipes. Check out the strawberry shortcake recipe for a full tutorial of it. But yeah, some coconut whipped cream, some fresh berries, maybe a sprig of mint is just the freshness that it needs. Yeah, no whipped cream competition today.
Didn't work
Jenny,
out
would you
for
mind?
me very well last time.
You know what I was going for. Okay, that looks beautiful. Okay, I'm going for a raspberry. Some mint.
It's very patriotic again. I feel like that's our vibe.
It smells so good. Should we try it?
Yeah.
Honestly, it has that same richness as the original, but the chocolate here tastes higher quality. Do you agree? And the crust still has that firmness and the crumbliness, but it's easier to cut through with a fork.
I prefer this crust because there's actually some flavor in it. That crust was pretty plain. This crust has like that almond flavor, the nut flavor, and that accentuates the chocolate well.
And the texture from the nut and the coconut flours is really nice.
I think we nailed it.
I agree. So we've got this gluten-free, grain-free, refined sugar-free, lactose-free, salted chocolate tart that tastes really freaking good.
Let us know how yours turned out. We'll be baking a bunch of these.
And don't stress if you didn't take notes because the recipe is below. Watch it again, follow along, look for our tips and tricks, but that recipe's down there if you need it. We want to make healthy baking easy and fun and delicious, so subscribe to Well+Good's YouTube channel and comment below with what you'd like to see. Bye.